Hey there, garden friends. Today I've got something extra juicy to share with you. My top 5 favorite tomato varieties that are an absolute hit here in sunny Florida. I think some of these might surprise you, so get ready to dive into the wonderful world of tomatoes that have aced the Sunshine State test. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. I'm Katrina with Homegrown Florida. Before we jump into the varieties, let's talk about the challenges we faced when growing tomatoes in our subtropical climate. The intense heat and humidity can really take a toll on these very delicate plants. Fungal issues such as blight and powdery mildew become really common enemies. Pests are a whole other issue here. They will definitely keep you on your toes, but don't worry. By choosing the right varieties and timing your planting, we can overcome these challenges and enjoy a beautiful harvest. If you want to learn about how to deal with the disease and the pests on your tomato plants, make sure to check out my previous video on worst tomato growing problems. I'll add it to the description below as well as at the end of this video. Another thing to consider when growing tomatoes here is that the timing is key. Our ideal growing season are spring and fall when the temperatures are more moderate and the pests have kind of calmed down a little bit. You want to avoid planting during the scorching summer months as the heat can stress the plants out and it actually hinders the fruit set. Tomato plants will actually stop setting fruit if the temperature is above 90 degrees for several days in a row. By planning out our planting accordingly, we set ourselves up for the best success. Now let's dive into the stars of these shows. Let's meet the tomato superstars that have stolen my heart and taste buds here in Florida. These are the champions that have battled the heat, outwitted the diseases, and endured all the pests. Let's start out with the paste tomato San Marzano. Known for its exceptional taste and it has that meaty texture, San Marzano is a classic Italian variety that thrives pretty well in our climate. It's perfect for making sauces. This one is my favorite one to grow for canning, especially tomato sauce. It's thick and it's meaty. San Marzano grows quickly and with high productivity. It's pretty easy to find seeds for this, and if you're lucky, you might even be able to find transplants at a big box store. Next up is a super tiny tomato, and it's not the Everglade tomato. I know many people recommend Everglade tomatoes here, but that one is not making my top 5 list. That might be a surprise for you, but for me, I don't like the taste of these as much as I like the taste of red currant tomatoes. The red currant is as small as an Everglade, but the skin is tougher so they don't break when you're picking them from the plant, which helps them keep longer for fresh eating. Just like the Everglade tomato, the red currant has set fruit for me even when the temperatures get high. It does struggle against blight like other tomato plants, but it does hold off much longer than other varieties. These adorable little tomatoes pack a huge punch in terms of flavor. Believe it or not, they are my absolute all favorite of all time tomato. Pop them straight into your mouth or use them in salads or pasta dishes. They do not disappoint. Before we move on to the next variety, head down and give me a big thumbs up if you're enjoying this video. Next up is my favorite medium-sized tomato, which is this guy right here, the Neptune tomatoes. They're a Florida favorite for the excellent heat tolerance and disease resistance. These vine-ripe tomatoes boost a firm yet juicy texture and are perfect for slicing in sandwiches. They are not super popular, but they are one of my favorite to grow for canning salsas because they're a determinate tomato, which means they come ripe all at once. So you can get a big harvest to can all at once. They are a pretty consistent, solid performer. Next up is the red or yellow pear tomato. With its unique kind of pear shape and its vibrant red color, red pear tomatoes are a bit different than what you might be used to. They look like a mix between a grape and a plum tomato. They offer a very sweet, tangy flavor that pairs well with pretty much everything. I've been growing the same variety over and over for years in my garden, saving the seeds each year, and they have gotten more and more productive and lasted longer and longer into the year. Also, since I've been breeding them over and over through the years, they have started to get larger than they were when I first began them, while the taste seems to have remained the same. They do tend to split when we get heavy rain, so I always go and pick them right before or after a big rainstorm to prevent this from happening. They're by far the most productive tomato I have ever grown, and they are just so versatile. I use them for fresh eating, for cooking, and I've even used them for canning. Next up is the Floradade tomato, a locally developed variety that specifically was bred to thrive the Florida climates. It was created in 1976 by the University of Florida in Homestead, Florida, through cross-pollination. It was designed to withstand weather fluctuations and fungal disease. It is also a determinate medium-sized tomato that comes ripe all at once in a bush-type plant, similar to the Neptune in many ways, but it's just a touch more heat tolerant than the Neptune is. You probably noticed that when it comes to large tomatoes, I like to pick determinate tomatoes. Part of this is because they are ideal for canning, but I also really love them for fresh eating. Because they are determinates, the tomatoes do come ripe all at once, but what I like to do is pick them when they're light green or blushing pink, and usually towards the end of the season when the plants are starting to succumb to blight or when the pests are getting too intense. Then I just leave those on the counter to ripen. The pink ones are going to ripen first, and the green ones will ripen over the next several months or two. Usually that gets me through the summer months with fresh tomatoes to eat, even though my plants are long gone at that point. They're much better eaten ripe, from the plant, but this is a great way to extend my tomato season and avoid buying them from the store. I do the same thing in winter right before a frost, and those tomatoes get me through until around February. Doing it this way, I can eat homegrown tomatoes for 9 out of 12 months a year. Now let's get inside and make my favorite appetizer with garden fresh tomatoes, bruschetta, or is it bruschetta? Bruschetta? Let's find out. The first time I had bruschetta was, I think, at Olive Garden, believe it or not. And it was one of their appetizers, and I absolutely loved it. It's so good. So I start with having some of my red currant tomatoes. And these are the ones that are very similar to Everglade tomatoes. We're going to put them in a bowl, and we're going to add all the rest of the ingredients, which starts with 1 clove of garlic. Now, the recipe is actually for a much larger amount of these. I think it's for 6 pieces of toast, but I'm just making one for myself. So I'm going to just do 1/3 of the recipe. So I'm mincing up this garlic super fine as I possibly can, because I don't want big, huge chunks of garlic, because this is going in raw. After the garlic, I'm adding in some sun-dried tomatoes, and these are actually dehydrated tomatoes from my red pear tomatoes from last year, last year. So I have had these in the fridge in a vacuum sealed. They probably don't necessarily need to be in the fridge because they are dehydrated, but they do last longer that way. We're adding some oil and some balsamic. It's a teaspoon a piece. And then we're going to add some pepper and some salt. For the herbs, this is a really simple recipe. We're just going to be adding basil. Now I have had a terrible time with basil lately, so I have not been growing it, so I did have to buy this kind of freeze-dried type basil. Then we're just going to give that a good mix, And if you have the time, I strongly encourage you to put this in the fridge for a couple hours, or like make it the day before, so that way all you have to do is top your toast with it. Now I have some sourdough bread I made, a sourdough loaf, an artisan loaf, and I toasted a few of those in my little Bravo oven. And all you have to do at this point is just simply top the toast with the tomato mixture. It has this kind of acid with the balsamic and the tomatoes, especially these tomatoes, because they have a really intense burst of flavor. Then you have that garlic, and the basil really shines and kind of soaks into the bread, and it's just amazing. Thanks for watching today. I am going to put up my common tomato problem video right here in case you want to check that out between now and my next upload. Happy gardening, guys.